All right, today we're using our Einstar 3D scanner to scan the bulkhead on this Desert Dynamics Sandcar. I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing the Einstar. There's a lot of videos on how to do the Einstar 3D scanning. We're going to quickly do the scan. I'm going to show you here scans showing up on the computer, and then we're going to show you how to get the mesh into Fusion 360. So that's a critical component of getting it into Fusion 360 and figuring out how then to start making your components in Fusion 360. We'll just finish up the scan real quick, kind of go slow in some of the complex areas, get it saved into multiple files, and then we'll get going in Fusion 360. Okay, now that we have the 3D scan saved, I'm going to show you how to get it into Fusion and get it to the point where you can work with it. So we're going to go up and we're going to do Insert Mesh, and then we're going to do Select from Computer. Look for your 3D scan. I have these broken up into a few different files just because they become really large otherwise. So we're going to let's just grab this one. Okay, you'll get this insert mesh screen over here on the right. Make sure that you're inserting it, it's getting inserted the same that it was saved. So this was saved in millimeters. It doesn't matter if your sketch is going to wind up being in inches. So my sketch is going to wind up being in inches, but the mesh was saved in millimeters. So we got to make sure it's in millimeters. We're going to center it on the drawing, move it to the ground. We're going to move it around afterwards anyway, but I'll show you how to do that. Okay. Okay, so now our scanned image is in there. But you'll notice that it's not correct on the plane. So right now, if we draw on it, it's going to be very confusing. So what we want to do is we're just going to go to the front here, and we're going to select this. We're going to move it. We're going to right mouse click, move or copy. And then that allows us to move this. And we're going to try to get it oriented first with that plane. And we'll just get it rough. It's probably okay to start. Zoom in a little bit. It needs to go a little bit more. So it's probably more like, come down here and do a fine adjustment. It's probably more 2 degrees. Yeah, that's probably good for now. We're going to jump to here. Obviously, that needs to be adjusted as well. So we're going to do it the same way on this axis. So we're going to rotate. We're probably like 6 degrees, 7 degrees, maybe 7.5. So this takes a little kind of playing around with until you kind of get it right. And then we're going to go over here. So that obviously needs to be moved as well. I'm going to tell you, take your time getting this right, though. It will make your life much easier once you start drawing. So that looks pretty good. I usually use the grid lines as basis. So you can see our grid lines pretty close there on the front of that plate. Looks like our scan probably wasn't perfectly 90 degrees, but that's probably because the bulkhead's probably not perfectly 90 degrees, which is fine. We're going to correct that in our drawing. So actually, let me do selecting in here. Go back to the front. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. And that needs to be adjusted a little bit, it looks like. So again, we're going to adjust this. Probably maybe 1 degree. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay, so then once we have that, we're ready to start drawing. So we can also orient this. Let's see, this is actually the back. That is the top. So we have that right, looks like. And, well, actually, that's the top. So let's just spend a little bit of time getting that right. Otherwise, what's going to happen is once we start drawing this entire bulkhead, we're always going to come over here and we're going to refer to the top or the bottom, and it's just going to be confusing. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same thing. Move copy. This time I'm just going to rotate this 180 degrees. Okay. So now that is our top. Come to the front. I think that is now our front. Yep, and that is our back. Okay. So now we have it oriented correctly. I'm trying to go as fast as I can on this, so our video is not super long. We're going to start a new sketch. Okay. I'm going to come in and do a construction line to get the middle. So we'll do construction line over here. And I'm going to draw what is about the middle here. Oh, and the other thing too is let's get it centered with the drawing, the middle of the drawing. So we're going to do a construction line right along this middle drawing. And then we're going to move everything one more time. So I'm just going to do another line here. We'll extend this line down so we have a nice long construction line. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's easier to see this center line when you're moving this, when you're moving your object. Okay, now I'm going to do a select here. Now you're going to notice one thing's going to happen when I go to do the select. I got to move him, and I'm going to move this over to about the center line. If I zoom in, it'll make it so that I can drag it with more accuracy. And it looks about at the center line. I click OK. Now the one thing is when I go back into this sketch, because in our timeline, we've moved this after we started our sketch, right? So if I go in and edit this sketch, what's going to happen? That guy's going to move, right? So I'm going to finish that sketch. In the timeline, I'm just going to move this and move our sketch after our move to the end of the timeline, or I can drag, let's just drag the move to before our sketch. Okay. So now when I go in to edit my sketch, that move's already occurred, right? So we've already moved the object. So our sketch isn't, our sketch is after the move. Okay, so now we can come into our sketch. And we've already got a center line. So that makes it good, makes it easy. We could draw a couple more construction lines here and make sure that that center line is actually in the center. But it looks like it's pretty close, so we're just going to keep going here so that we don't waste a bunch of time on this video. And we're going to draw some lines here for our actual drawing. I'm not too worried about my dimensions right now. I'm just going to get some lines on here, so I can always change them. Just kind of overlap over this guy. Okay, maybe about there. And then we're going to come back to our construction line. Okay. One thing you will find sometimes is when you're doing this, if you can't see your drawing, that's because your 3D scan is above your drawing. So in this case, you see our drawing is way above our 3D scan. But if you have that problem, you again, so your drawing plane is way up here, you can again just select your object and move it. So again, we're going to do move copy, and we're going to move our object way up here. So if we had it, for example, there, right? and we go to edit our drawing, back into our sketch, edit sketch, it's going to be difficult to see our sketch lines because our our object, our body, is actually above our sketch. Apparently I didn't put it quite above our sketch. No, I didn't. So let's go do that again. Finish. Oh, it's because our move, again, is after our sketch in our timeline. So if we were to do this and move that to there, you would see what I mean. So this is a very common issue. So you'll notice now when we go to edit our sketch, now I can't see my lines, my sketch lines, right? So if I come in again, come over here, and I say, hey, I just want my body a tiny bit below my sketch. So I'm going to move it again. I'm just going to move it a tiniest bit below my sketch. So maybe like right there. Okay. Okay, again, that's after. We're going to have to move it because it's after our sketch in the timeline, which is fine. We're going to come back up, reorient ourselves, edit our sketch. Okay, now we can see all of our lines. If we want to turn this body on and off, we can do that right here. So we can just kind of look at our drawing. That looks pretty good. Okay, so then I'm just going to come in. I'm going to use the fillet tool, and I'm going to kind of come in and do a couple of fillets here, there, and do one there. Kind of clean these up a little bit there, and then I'm going to do one here. I think that looks pretty good. Turn this guy back on. Looks pretty good. We could realign this guy to make it closer, but for the purposes of this video, you can see that that looks pretty good. So now you probably wonder, why did I only do half of it? So I want this to be symmetrical. So whenever we're doing a symmetrical part, I always only draw half of the part, and then we're going to mirror it. So this is the mirror icon to mirror it. The way I usually like to do this is I pick the mirror line first, so which is our construction line, and then we're going to select our object second. And the reason for that is once you've selected your mirror line, then as you select your objects, they will automatically start to show up on the other side. The advantage to that is you can see if you've missed anything over there as you're selecting your objects. You can also just highlight everything and say mirror everything, but you're going to get all your constraints, all of your points and everything that you really don't need. Really all you need is your lines, right? So we've got everything. Looks like nope, looks like we missed one arc here. Okay. So we got everything. So we're going to say okay. Okay, and you can see now when I hover over it, how it highlights the entire thing. That way we know it's entirely closed object. We're going to say finish sketch. Now that it's finished, I'm going to highlight it. This is going to be a sheet metal object. So I'm going to come over to sheet metal. I'm going to say create flange. And then once we do create flange, we already have profile selected. And I already have entered in all of my sheet metal rules from SendCut, which if you guys need that, let me know in the comments and I'll do a video on doing that. It's really easy. But from here, now we can just say, okay, from my sheet metal rules, what is this? It's steel and it's 4130. We're going to make it out of 4130 from SendCut. And we could do either 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch. We're going to do 1/8 inch 4130. We want to create a new component so that over here in our browser, it's going to create a brand new component. And what side do we want it on? Do we want it centered on our sketch, side 1 or side 2? So I'll show you as we roll over here. So right now, there is side 1, there is side 2, And then if we did centered, it would center on the sketch. Well, because that we're working with our mesh, right, bulkhead object, we really want side 2 so that it's away from the sketch, so that we can, as we continue to make components, they don't start intersecting with that object. So we're going to say, okay, now we got a new component right here, and come up. There's our new component. We can turn our bulkhead back on, see how that lines up. It's a little off. We could have fixed that a little bit for this video. I think we're pretty good. And then we can rename our component. So I like to rename all the components as you get in a complex design. So we're going to name this top plate. It really helps. Okay, so there's our component. And there we go. And as you turn on your bulkhead, you can see it fitting in with our 3D scan bulkhead. And you just work your way through these 3D scans if you're doing a complex one of all the components. So the idea is, we'll jump over to one that I've been working on for a while. So this is that bulkhead. So the idea is that you get to a point where you have this bulkhead recreated. And you may be wondering, well, the bulkhead's already on the car. Why 3D scan and recreate this bulkhead? So the reason we're recreating this bulkhead is because the next step is then to create the arms, the upper and lower arms that will go on this bulkhead. Actually then put the working rack on the front with the tie rods and everything, so we can cycle the arms with the shocks, make sure we don't have any issues there, or make sure we figure out our bump steer and everything before we send a single piece to Send Cut Send to have them cut the metal for us, and before we do any welding at all. That way, hopefully, we avoid most of the issues that we're going to have before we actually start any fabrication. Okay, hopefully that helped. If you want to see any other videos, let me know. Like and subscribe. Thank you.